think?
You guys.
Why F us?
Because it is really... Don't videotape me. I did not consent to be videotaped.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
So in a public setting, you probably shouldn't let people off and tell them to F off if you don't want to.
You're walking around with hate speech.
What is hate speech about this?
Because you're actively promoting anti-trans agenda by walking around with that. Like, you know what you're doing.
Okay. So children cannot consent to puberty blockers. Children under the age of 18, you disagree with this sign?
I 100% disagree with the sign.
Right.
It is really critical to trust people at any age that they know what's going on. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I don't believe in ageism. So.
Okay.
So what about when it comes to sex? Do you believe in ageism? Do you believe that children can consent to sex with adults?
Not with adults.
Why not?
Okay, we're talking about different things. So ageism as in that adults have all of the accumulated knowledge that ever needs to be had versus children.
That's a good point.
That is what I'm talking about. Like, adults do not have all the accumulated knowledge. I don't agree with that. Like,
children.
It is important to trust that like people at different ages have different levels of knowledge. And if you're videotaping me, please stop.
Okay, so you said that we trust children to know what's best for them in your first argument, but now when it comes to sex, children don't have the accumulated knowledge. You acknowledge that. You're saying children can change sex, but they can't have sex. Why
you
is that
are
different
doing
standard?
the hate group thing where you're mishmashing predatory things with kids understanding their own genders and their own identities. Predatory sexual behavior is not the same thing as people being trans. They are different things. You cannot put them in the same group.
I'd say indoctrinating children to believe that they're born in the wrong body and that they need to change their body to find true happiness, I'd say that's a pretty predatory
No
thing.
one is being indoctrinated.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Don't you think it's predatory, though, to, for example, give a double mastectomy to a 12, 13-year-old girl?
I don't think it's predatory
You
because
think that's
like
okay?
people have to go through a lot of counseling in order to get to that point.
Not so much anymore.
I disagree with you. I know a lot of trans kids.
How old are they?
That's none of your business.
Well, you brought it up.
So let me give you one quick
I
example.
did not
of
ask that
how
specific question.
It's
One quick
okay.
example of how this isn't happening. Last year in Milwaukee, they had a Pride event, and a psychologist set up a tent there with a sandwich board outside saying, trans or non-binary, 3 letters of recommendation for surgery. All you had to do was walk up to this psychologist and they'll just rubber stamp your letter that you need to go get surgery. I know other kids who've called in over the phone to telehealth in order to get the recommendations that we need. We've got Jamie Reed, who is married to a trans man. She calls herself a queer woman. She worked at the Washington University Transgender Clinic in St. Louis for 4 years as case manager. She quit in November. She says the kids that come in to their gender clinic there, they send them to a therapist that they know will simply rubber stamp the letter that's needed for surgery. And if a child happens to come in from some outside therapist who doesn't think this is the right course of action, they'll send them to an in-house psychologist or psychiatrist who they know will then rubber stamp it. There are no safeguards anymore for these kids. And to even suggest that these children need therapy is to invalidate their gender identity. And so the trend is no therapy at all. It's like what you said in your first argument, children know what's best for them and they don't dare to question anything anymore. They start them on puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and refer them for surgeries right away. What do you think of that?
I think you have not even close to completely full information. Like maybe that is a sliver of what is going on, but the great majority of trans kids do have tons of conversations with the adults in their lives. Rarely is something done immediately. I know a lot of trans kids and or on the non-binary spectrum, and very, very, very rarely do you do something when you're under 18 that is not easily reversible, like puberty blockers, which are easily reversible.
Yeah.
Because you can stop taking them and then
How many
puberty
of these kids
happens
do you think stop
again.
taking them?
Some of them do.
So
Yeah.
the statistics on this are 98% of children who start on puberty blockers progress to cross-sex hormones. Because you're not just signing them up for puberty blockers. These kids are committed to this whole pathway. They're told that first they need to stop their bodies from developing because it would be too traumatic for them to appear like their actual sex. It would be traumatic for a young girl to develop into a woman.
Please. Please do not. Do you know how many hate groups,
Turn on.
like, no! Do you know how many hate groups, like, will come after me and dox me?
What hate groups?
Like,
All right.
so many.
You're not that special.
And
Well, you can
are
stop
going
talking to us if you want.
You want to stop talking to us? You were the one
are
that flipped us
putting-
off. You were the one that flipped us off. That's why we came
because
over
you're
here.
walking around with like a hate speech billboard.
Right, but pretty
I am
reasonable that we
not-
came over here to talk to you after you flipped us off, correct? So if you
Yeah,
didn't want the
but
attention, you
but
shouldn't have
I
given it
asked
to us.
multiple times not to video record me. Like, people go after people online and like
You're-
destroy their lives.
You're in
Okay,
public.
stop
We're having
talking.
very respectful conversations. We don't need to talk to you. You don't need to talk to us. Is that cool?
But I asked multiple
she's
times to
confused.
not
Talk to
video
me.
record me.
So if we're gonna talk, we have to. It's for our safety. People will
I am not video recording me.
It's
And
fine.
and I
We'll-
asked
we'll send it over to you.
times. Like, I
Like I just said, you don't need to talk to us. You continue talking to us, so we're staying here. Do you
I
understand?
think it is like really awful that
it's good
there's
that we
like
talk
a
about it.
sliver of a group of people that are. Do you know how many
Trying to stop kids
trans
from being
commit suicide
sterilized?
because they can't like figure
Another
themselves
lie.
out?
So you've told me
It's
the
not
two lies
true.
that
What
trans
it-
activists always say. They only ever have two things to say, and they're both false. The first one is that puberty blockers are reversible. Well, how's time reversible? If a kid goes on puberty blockers from 12 to 17, is there some time machine where they get to go back to being 12 again? Of course not. And the other lie, and it's really despicable and coercive and manipulative of you to say so, is that kids are going to kill themselves if we don't let them transition. Guess what? Humans have been on this planet for about 200,000 years. They've been going through puberty just fine. Kids were killing themselves because they were growing up. Puberty is not a medical condition.
You are only seeing things through your very privileged perspective that doesn't see
Just because I'm a
how
white male, is that what makes me privileged?
you do have historical and current privilege. Like, it is important for you to recognize that, even if you have other points in.
Identity?
You just said that you're a white male.
How do you know?
You just said it.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't assume it. I
by
didn't say that
virtue
that's
of
what you
being
were.
born with less melanin in my skin, I am an oppressor by nature.
I'm not saying that you are actively going forth and working to oppress people, although you are. I am
By saying we
saying
shouldn't sterilize and mutilate kids, I'm oppressing them.
you're not.
How is it not
sterilizing
sterilizing them?
I mean,
Well, just
people
prove them
have-
wrong. Why don't you just educate them?
If you
You know what I
think
mean?
that people are just there to like put forward and be baby making factories, then maybe in your head that's what it is, but people are so much more than that, and most trans adults wish that they could have changed puberty at when they were initially going into puberty.
Why?
Because then there's always going to be traits in adulthood that are going to be corresponded to a different gender.
Like what?
Things that the world looks at and says
So
maybe
aesthetics.
is more.
So I don't think that it's right to sterilize a child, cut apart children over aesthetics, over looks.
I
you
mean,
know that that's not right.
And let's talk about this.
I don't think that we are like destroying children because they remove or change a particular aspect. That is not what I think is destroying. I think what you are doing is destroying like the soul of people and making people at so much more risk of being persecuted and denied rights and denied to be allowed to like exist in the world.
So little girls, you think, have a right to double mastectomies. At what age?
Well, one, I disagree with your gendering, and two,
What?
I think that is up to the adults
Wait,
in
why
their
do you
lives.
disagree with the gendering? What do you mean?
Because you just said little girls, and if somebody
Oh
is
my
so,
God!
There's no such
my-
thing as a little girl.
I think you are misgendering people that are coming out as trans and moving forward. Like, and
Oh, you mean
also,
those girls are actually little boys, is what you mean.
I don't know what their identity is, and neither do you.
Could they be
Okay,
gay?
but-
Could they end up being just gay? Because I'll bring it back to Chris here. Actually, Chris, take it away.
Gender and sexuality are not the same thing.
But let's assume they were. Oh, sorry.
But they're not.
So good.
They're, they're not, because I am a cis woman, but I'm also gay, and so I know that they're separate.
So you talked about adults who wish they hadn't gone through puberty. So let's talk about these children with gender dysphoria, this self-loathing of their biological sex. All of the academic studies that have ever been done into gender dysphoria before we started giving kids puberty blockers show that more than 80% of these children, when they went through puberty, and these were mostly boys that it used to affect, more than 80% simply grew out of it. The most recent study that was done followed 139 boys from the age of 4 or 5 all the way into their 20s. 87.8% of them grew out of it. 63.6% grew up to be gay. So, when we know that more than 80% of these kids with gender dysphoria will simply grow out of it, and a lot of them grow up to be gay, what the heck are we doing stopping their physical development and sterilizing these kids who are just going to be happy, healthy gay men and women?
What do you think about that?
One, there are so many more statistics and studies, and a ton of experts believe that you should support trans folks in their journeys. You are thinking through one very tiny sliver. And also, I do not believe that sexuality and gender are the same thing, and you are conflating them, which I disagree with. And also, like, I think
How did
I
he
know people
really quick? How did
I
he
know
conflate them?
people who do detransition
not
and
gonna
they
answer
feel
that one.
fine about it.
They feel fine about it.
They
So
feel
you
fine about it.
So after a 13-year-old had her breasts removed, before they even developed, just removed, she'll be fine with that the rest of her life.
I can't speak to each individual person, and
But
I
you
would
just
personally
said
love
that's
to
fine.
break down
Would you be
gender
fine with
more.
that? I wouldn't be.
You don't know what they're going to feel because you
I think
probably,
I do.
No, you don't.
I
Because
kinda do.
you probably identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, so you don't know what they feel.
There's no such thing as gender assigned at birth, and there's no such thing as a transgender child. They're called boys
Well,
and
we
girls.
have huge disagreements, and you know, I
More-
grew up in the South. I have people that I love that have huge disagreements with me, but they do not go around actively putting forth hate speech in the
What's
world.
hateful about this?
You know what you're doing.
Well, what's
No, I
hateful
You're
about
going
it?
out there to try and talk actively against people being trans when you should just say
Why not?
it's okay for people to explore themselves.
You're ignoring the basis for the conversation, and that's
I'm
children.
done now, and if you put my stuff online, then it is on your head if I get doxxed by
You'll
by
be
horrific
fine.
people. That's
The
not
only
what
violence
happens.
that ever gets committed with respect to this subject comes from the trans activists towards people like us. You don't need
That
to
is
worry about
not
it.
true.
Really?
Like,
You
people
have
that are
videos that show
oppressed
this? I've had
are
my arm
going
broken, I've been
through
assaulted
so much
probably 40
horrific
times.
things. Well, look,
I haven't seen one video of
So he
trans activists
deserved
ever
it,
getting
because
attacked.
it's what he was wearing.
I've never seen video of trans
that
activists
is a
getting attacked.
ridiculous thing to conflate to
Well, you
what
just said
to what
because-
femme people like
What
go
are
through.
people?
Feminine people, women, people that go throughout the world and like the patriarchy oppresses them. Like that is a ridiculous thing that you just conflated.
Patriarchy.
Or-
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. You did a great job.
Patriarchy, white supremacy.
Best of luck with the ideology.
Every
Thank you.
possible social justice
cis-
warrior activist talking point.
The white cisgender
She went down the
patriarch.
list and just called us everything. It's like, bro, we can have a conversation.
Get to Nazis.